This is wrestling's greatest moments.
Hey now, wrestling fans! It's time for another episode of Wrestling's Greatest Moments. The moment when a villain turns hero, or a hero turns heel, can take a fan's breath away. But what happens when two wrestlers, or two teams, turn simultaneously? Sit back as Wrestling's Greatest Moments looks at Wrestling's Double Turns Part 1. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single video. The ritual behind the turn. Pro wrestling, like many forms of entertainment, has deep roots in culture, which is why it's become increasingly studied by academics. One element that fans repeatedly see is the symbolic ritual, which can reinforce fans' understanding of pro wrestling's basic rules and conventions. One type of symbolic ritual is the turn, where a wrestler changes their persona from hero to villain, or vice versa. This is common in many entertainment mediums, including motion pictures. An example of a symbolic ritual in film is when Darth Vader saves Luke Skywalker's life at the end of Return of the Jedi, sacrificing himself as he turns from the dark side. Wrestling often uses symbolic rituals to show turns. Unless a booker is desperate and/or incompetent, a wrestler won't just change allegiances without an event that symbolizes their turn. For example, a babyface tired of losing due to playing by the rules could cut a promo explaining their new attitude. A heel turning to the side of angels may see something so villainous that even they can't stand for it, such as a male wrestler attacking a female, while fans often point to key matches or angles, as when a person turns heel or babyface, there's usually a build-up to the turn. As a result, these matches or angles are more symbolic of the heel turn. Bruce Pritchard addressed this during his podcast, Something to Wrestle With, while discussing the legendary Bret Hart-Steve Austin double turn at WrestleMania XIII, a turn we'll be discussing in a bit. It wasn't all in one night. When Steve came back from injury and got the Stone Cold gimmick rolling, he just had this groundswell of support. The audience wanted Steve to be their guy so bad. They waited and waited, and they had already turned Steve. If anything, it was the turning of Bret Hart that solidified the crybaby Bret and turned Austin. I think Bret felt, both personally and character-wise, that the audience just turned on him for this foul-mouthed Texan that should be cheered, not cheered. That crowd reaction kind of confused Bret a little bit. Turns often follow a change in the fans' attitude towards a wrestler. They also occur when a promoter feels a wrestler needs a fresh coat of paint. Whatever the case, fans will notice a change is coming. Now, let's look at some of wrestling's best-known double turns. Ted DiBiase, Dick Murdoch. In 1985, NWA World Heavyweight Champion Nature Boy Ric Flair was doing his best to avoid defending his title against Mid-South Wrestling's #1 contender, Hacksaw Butch Reed. This included offering Mid-South Wrestling's Dick Slater $50,000 to deal with Reed. Reed confronted Slater one-on-one and even offered him a free shot, with Slater choosing to walk away. Flair wasn't finished yet. Reed called out Flair about the bounty, giving Flair a free shot. Flair took it, only to walk into a big fist from Butch Reed. However, Dick Slater ambushed Reed, and before long, Hacksaw was beaten silly by the two heels. Slater put the finishing touches on Reed, with Flair and Slater delivering a spike pile driver. As a result, Mid-South had to find a new challenger for Flair. Enter Ted DiBiase, a top-ranked heel whose credentials were well known. However, babyface wrestler Dick Murdoch showed up, confronting Flair and saying he deserved the title shot. Flair couldn't care less and walked away. The match was scheduled to begin when Murdoch entered the ring, telling DiBiase to step aside. Murdoch, who was influential in DiBiase's entry into wrestling and served as a mentor for years, felt he deserved the title shot. Staying in heel character, DiBiase dismissed Murdoch's request, telling him he was washed up. This led to an impromptu brawl, with DiBiase knocking Murdoch out of the ring. The ever-opportunistic Flair kneed DiBiase in the back, sending him out of the ring. Murdoch attacked DiBiase, ramming his head into the steel post. Ted was busted open, putting the match in jeopardy. Bill Watts gave the fans the grave news that Ted had suffered a severe laceration and needed a pressure bandage to stop the bleeding. In a masterclass of promotion, Watts said DiBiase was going to wrestle the match despite his injury. Watts reminded fans that DiBiase had waited a year for a match that some wrestlers only dreamed of. Bill continued, selling his Mid-South wrestler's toughness by praising DiBiase's decision. Watts then knocked boxer Roberto Duran for stopping a fight against Sugar Ray Leonard due to his stomachache. Bill said Duran's actions made him sick to his stomach. Just to make sure everyone tuned in, Mid-South's owner cautioned viewers that things could get bloody if DiBiase's bandage came off. DiBiase came to the ring wearing his Spirit of 76 bandage. The fans knew Ted wasn't 100%, but they were firmly behind him. Ted took the fight to Flair, despite Flair targeting DiBiase's dome. Soon the bandage came off, revealing a crimson mask. The announcers sold how DiBiase was weak from blood loss, but DiBiase continued the fight. The fans cheered as DiBiase locked Flair in the figure 4 leg lock, only for Flair to reach the ropes. However, DiBiase went at it again, applying the hold, only for Flair to kick him out of the ring. Unfortunately, DiBiase's head hit the metal security barrier, and he was counted out. Ted's near victory impressed fans and gave them another reason to respect him. Then, Dick Murdoch showed up, delivering a brainbuster to DiBiase on the cement floor. Mid-South's announcers could barely contain themselves as they kept fans updated on DiBiase's condition. Ted was anything but smiling as ambulance attendants took him out. The announcers continuing to sell the attack like it was December 7th, 1941, all over again. This shocking turn led to the fans booing the once cheered Murdoch and showing their support for DiBiase. However, not every double turn is a work of art, as we're about to see next. Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Uncensored 99. Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan's double turn at 1999's Uncensored pay-per-view was a disaster from start to finish. Hogan, still healing it up as Hollywood Hulk Hogan, made his never-ending feud with Nature Boy Ric Flair personal when he turned Flair's son David against him. Flair, who was working as a babyface and storyline president of WCW, was ready for revenge when he challenged WCW NWO World Champion Hulk Hogan in a steel cage match, where Flair would be forced to retire if he lost, but become WCW president for life if he won. There was another stipulation, but as the good people at WrestleCrap note in their account of the match, no one could mention it on WCW television due to censorship restrictions. The stipulation was a first blood match. While you might think WCW writer Vince Russo would have found a way to reference Sylvester Stallone's Rambo character into it, that didn't happen. Instead, the match stated the referee would declare a winner once a wrestler made their opponent bleed. However, this was subject to the referee's discretion, so if a wrestler suffered a paper cut, the match would continue, unless it was the greatest paper cut in the history of our sport. In case you missed the match, sketchy referee Charles Robinson, aka Little Nate, ignored it when Flair was busted open by Hogan. The announcers initially said that Robinson was exercising his referee's discretion. However, as documented in the death of WCW, all semblance of logic went out the window. Or here, the cage. During the match, which took place inside a cage, Flair got gashed in the head with some razor wire and began to bleed. The announcers, confused, couldn't figure out why the match was continuing. They would have been comforted to know that fans watching at home couldn't figure it out either. Then, Hogan bled. The confusion continued as Hogan applied the figure 4 leg lock and later attempted to pin Flair, only for Little Nate to move like a turtle with a busted wheel when it was time to make the count. Arn Anderson arrived, handing Flair a tire iron, which Slick Rick promptly used to KO Hogan and get the 3 count, winning the first blood match by pinfall. Behind the scenes, Ric Flair reportedly wasn't happy playing a babyface, and Hogan was ready to trade in his black and white outfit for his heroic red and yellow. Subsequently, the fans, at least the fans WCW hadn't driven off with yet another poorly booked match, were cheering Hulk and hissing at Flair. This bout symbolized both a double turn and how badly WCW was being booked. As fans know, WCW's booking in 1999 was a magma hot mess. WCW's execution of the double turn was like watching someone trying to nail Jell-O to a wall. Sure, it's funny, but not so much if you paid $29.95 to watch the show. The Powers of Pain, Demolition, Survivor Series, 1988. The Road Warrior success inspired a series of knockoff tag teams as promoters scrambled to create their own version of Hawk and Animal. Interestingly, 2 teams succeeded as Road Warrior style teams: the Powers of Pain, the Warlord and the Barbarian, and Demolition, Axe and Smash, The Powers of Pain feuded with the Road Warriors and Jim Crockett Promotions before leaving the area. Wrestling legend has it that they refused to work scaffold matches, and who can blame them, as it's obvious which team was taking the figurative and literal dive in these matches. Meanwhile, the WWF struck gold with Demolition, played by Bill Eadie, aka the Man Superstar, and Barry Darsow, aka Crusher Khrushchev. Moondog Randy Colley was originally set to play in Demolition, but depending on who you ask, he was replaced by Darsow because fans recognize him as a Moondog. Whatever the reason, Barry stepped in and the WWF pushed the team hard. Consequently, Demolition quickly got over. Although Bruce Pritchard has reportedly claimed Demolition was not the WWF's answer to the Road Warriors, it's hard to believe because Demolition popped up reportedly not long after the Road Warriors passed on signing with the WWF. Whatever the case, the book The Six Pack, On the Open Road in Search of WrestleMania, provides Bill Eadie's recollection of how the idea came into being. Bill began brainstorming the Demolition character with fellow wrestler Randy Colley, who had previously performed as Moondog Rex. Their idea went through several iterations, including monkey and hockey masks, before settling on the black-studded leather and face paint look that would soon become so iconic. Demolition crushed it, no pun intended, in the WWF, capturing the WWF Tag Team Championship and quickly winning over fans with their violent ways and captivating theme song. Enter the Powers of Pain, who Vince McMahon saw as an ideal babyface team to eventually run against Demolition. Initially managed by the Baron, aka AWA legend Baron von Raschke, the Powers of Pain steamrolled over their opponents on the way to an inevitable confrontation with Demolition. Then something odd happened. The Baron disappeared and the WWF couldn't ignore the fans' reaction to Demolition. In the article Seeing Double, the double turn of Demolition and the Powers of Pain, Brian Damage writes, "The Powers of Pain were seemingly over as babyfaces with the fans for a bit, but ultimately they were nowhere near what McMahon had envisioned for them. On the flip side, the heel team of Demolition were becoming extremely popular. Despite the team working as monster heels and being managed by the devious Mr. Fuji, WWF fans gravitated towards Axe and Smash. Consequently, the WWF pulled a double turn at 1988 Survivor Series. Demolition and Los Conquistadores held a 2-1 advantage over the remaining babyface team, the Powers of Pain. During the match, something odd happened, as Axe was thrown into the ropes, and Demolition's manager, Mr. Fuji, inexplicably held the rope so Axe would fall through. Axe was counted out, and Demolition smelled a rat, taking out Fuji with a body slam. Afterward, the Warlord and the Barbarian helped Fuji and embraced him as their new manager before polishing off the hapless masked jobbers. The turn was clunky, but it did the trick. Mr. Fuji explained he was tired of Demolition not listening to him, hence his betrayal. The WWF hadn't foreshadowed the turn, but fans seemed happy, cheering for Demolition and booing the Powers of Pain. Bret Hart, Stone Cold Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13. When fans talk about the gold standard of double turns, Hart and Austin come to mind, although where it ranks next to DiBiase and Murdoch will forever fuel debate. The feud couldn't have come at a better time, as the WWF pushed the envelope with storylines that blurred the line between babyfaces and heels, and encouraged fans to cheer for whom they liked. This shift in booking played out well, as the WWF capitalized on the fans' growing cheers for Stone Cold Steve Austin. Austin's take-no-prisoners attitude was seen in his promos and his matches, which endeared him to fans, despite him originally portraying a heel. At the same time, longtime babyface Bret the Hitman Hart was beginning to show signs of bitterness when he came up short, thanks to heel wrestlers' cheating tactics. Some fans even accused Hart of whining, including how he complained about fans embracing the foul-mouthed Steve Austin and his cheating ways. Behind the scenes, Vince McMahon saw a way to capitalize on the fans' changing attitudes. Bret Hart remembers Vince McMahon giving him a list of opponents the Hitman could wrestle as a babyface and a list of wrestlers he could face if he turned heel. "I had to admit to myself that the heel list appealed to me more, especially from the standpoint of safety. Most of the guys I'd work with if I was a face were reckless and stiff, whereas the babyfaces were workers such as Shaun, Stone Cold, and Taker. But actually turning heel? I wasn't sold on the idea by any means. Vince McMahon approached Hart about a heel turn, telling him this one would be unusual and that Hart would be booed in America but cheered everywhere else. Hart recalls McMahon explaining to him that everyone around the world loves to hate Americans. We come across like we're better than everyone else. This won't affect your merchandise sales because you'll be loved abroad for standing up to us Americans. Bret eventually went along with the idea. The WWF slowly turned up the heat as Steve Austin thwarted Hart's efforts to regain the WWF Championship from Shawn Michaels. Despite Hart eliminating Austin from the 1997 Royal Rumble, the referees missed it and Stone Cold snuck back in, eliminating Hart. Undaunted, Bret later won the WWF Championship in a fatal four-way match, booked to crown a new champion after Shawn Michaels lost his smile and relinquished the title. Unfortunately for Hart, Austin cost him the title when the Excellence of Execution defended the belt against Psycho Sid. Bret Hart was furious and ready to get his revenge at WrestleMania 13, where he was booked to battle Austin in a submission match, with Ken Shamrock appointed as a special referee. Fans witnessed a 22-minute classic as Hart and Austin fought furiously, with the Hitman busting Austin open and eventually locking him in the sharpshooter. Austin refused to give up, finally passing out from the pain as Ken Shamrock awarded the match to Hart. The match was a symbolic switch for both men. Hart recalled that during the match he noticed a mixed reaction from the crowd. I got a strong cheer, but there were enough angry signs and boos for me to see that my days as a babyface were truly over. Interestingly enough, Austin claims he was unaware that he was morphing into a babyface. When that match was being built up for WrestleMania 13, I was blind to me becoming a babyface. I didn't see it coming. I wasn't looking to be a babyface at all when we had that match. But the fans' cheers were outweighing their boos at the time. Everyone was telling me I'm a babyface. Hart, whose babyface run had taken him to the top of the WWF, sacrificed everything to put Austin over. The sacrifice did not go unnoticed. In 2023, Austin told the Wrestling Classic YouTube channel, "We went into WrestleMania 13, and we went to a room, and we knew what we needed to do, and we went out to the ring, and Bret said, 'Hey,' and he gave me the idea for something that happened in that match. So I owe a huge part of my career to Bret the Hitman Hart." The Austin-Hart double turn led to incredible success for both wrestlers. Austin would become a megastar, eventually winning the WWF Championship and working his iconic feud with Mr. McMahon. Hart's turn rejuvenated his career, showing his versatility at playing a heel and a babyface, depending on what country he competed in. Do you remember these double turns? What are your favorites? Are there any we missed? Share your thoughts in the comments section, and let us know if there's any videos you'd like Wrestling's Greatest Moments to cover. In the meantime, subscribe to our channel, follow us on X and Instagram, and spread the good news about Wrestling's Greatest Moments, the channel that celebrates the squared circle.